First Tomb Raider, then Mortal Kombat, then Halo, now Borderlands. Hey, memo to Hollywood. Stop ruining video games that I like, okay? No doubt there can be some exceptions, one that are pretty okay, some that I think are pretty underrated, and others which are completely phenomenal works of fiction. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're all wondering, please watch the show. It's amazing. The rest of your adaptations have either been mediocre or completely suck. And I hope to God they do not lay a finger on the Metro series. But, when it comes to Hollywood making movies out of video games, you know how the song goes. Ain't no rest for the wicked. Anyways, let's get down to talking about another franchise that is next in line in the execution. There are certainly some installments in the looter shooter series Borderlands that are loads of fun despite their issues. And others are completely worse on a level design, gameplay, and story perspective. But in my eyes, there's only one game that stands head and neck above the competition. And that would be Borderlands 2, one of the best role-playing first-person shooters I have ever played. From the quasi-post-apocalyptic science fiction aesthetic, its distinct, cel-shaded animated level design and locales, all filled with a colorful, fascinating, and hilarious array of supporting characters, including one of the greatest video game villains of the 2010s, Handsome Jack. The Vault Hunter classes were distinguishable from each other, each with their own set of abilities and strengths that they can use to overpower even the strongest of enemy types and challenging and addicting boss fights. One of these days, ancient dragons of destruction, one of these days! Not to mention the gratifying gameplay and multiplayer to the looting aspect that made you keep wanting to go and scour across Pandora to find some of the best weapons, shields, and mods in the entire game. So when I discovered the announcement of a live-action adaptation of the games, I envisioned all of the imaginable possibilities that could capture the spirit of the video games. I mean, how could you not? Perhaps we can get the video game adaptation equivalent of Mad Max Fury Road and Guardians of the Galaxy, whereas our unlikely vault hunters that we all know and love scour across Pandora to find the mother of all vaults. You'd have yourself a tight story, practical action scenes with an unbelievable sense of scale, a unique visual appeal, and world building that could unlock potential for audiences to come back for more, wondering what's gonna happen next for our heroes. Unfortunately, all those hopes that could have made it a dream come true were all dashed away by one single announcement of the person who would be directing the thing. And that would be none other than Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez wannabe, Eli Roth. Someone who I would describe as a director who is, shall we say, cinematically impaired. He has no grasp on how to make a movie slightly above average. And before you retort, no, Thanksgiving was not good. His reliance on gore and shock value is exploited to the point of being tiresome. And his script writing and dialogue for characters to say edgy lines or jokes in the most inappropriate places is childish beyond belief. And that pretty much sums up him as a filmmaker. Childish. Need I also remind you that this is the same man who made one of the worst remakes that I have ever seen in my entire life that spits in the face of an underrated classic starring Charles Bronson. It doesn't help the fact that when it came time for production, the movie was shelved repeatedly and wrapped 2 years ago, including having multiple reshoots done by an uncredited Tim Miller, and the fact that this movie was simply inspired by Eli Roth's dog pooping. And that's what Borderlands is, ladies and gentlemen. Eli Roth's bulldog pooping on your face, the fan's face, and onto the screen. Because this movie, on every conceivable dimension of analysis, is an abomination. For as critical as I have been for some movies in the past that I've reviewed as of late, I can at least comprehend how they can connect to a certain particular demographic. With this movie, I don't know who the heck this is gonna cater to. Maybe this is gonna appeal to those people who are willing to go down and dissect all of the bad movies to figure out what did they just watch, what went wrong, and how did it happen. Oh my god, even describing the plot is gonna be brutal. Okay, An independent bounty hunter named Lilith is being assigned by Atlas, who's not a real character in the games and in the movie is just a terribly cliched villain, of the Atlas Weapons Corporation to bring back his daughter, Tiny Tina, who was supposedly stolen by Roland, Atlas's shortest soldier, get it, and Krieg, who is her protector for some reason. The reason why Atlas needs her back is because he believes that she is tied to an ancient prophecy. Yes, it's another one of those kind of movies. He believes that she is tied to an ancient prophecy in which only a daughter of Iridia can open the vault. He needs to open the vault so we can acquire the mineral iridium, so we can manufacture weapons out of them, so we can take over all of Pandora. As Lilith aims to retrieve Tina from her allies, she begins to discover what could possibly be at stake, clues about her past, and questions that she asks herself, like, what is Iridia? What could possibly really be inside of that vault? And who is the real daughter of Iridia? Trust me, the answer to the latter is so easy that even a person who is not a fan of this franchise would figure it out. The reasons as to why this movie is such a catastrophe goes beyond just the director. Let's continue on with the script. The story was written by Craig Mason, who did the television miniseries Chernobyl and the latest video game TV adaptation, The Last of Us. After the project was finished, after multiple rewrites, Craig Mason took his own name off of the script and was eventually replaced by a person named Joe Crombie. And Joe Crombie is not a real person. It is actually a pseudonym that Mason went by to avoid and deny any involvement with the movie whatsoever. And you know what? I wouldn't blame him because the whole entire screenplay is a gigantic pile of scag dung. The film trips over its own shoelaces in order for the narrative to progress, and characters get lucky and get out of incredibly deadly situations because A, the action scenes never put the characters in any sort of peril to where you feel like one of them is going to die, and B, Atlas's private militia, the Crimson Lance, is probably the stupidest military group in the entire galaxy. They make the villains from Spaceballs look like the Empire from Star Wars, and Spaceballs is a parody. I swear there are 2 consecutive instances in the exact same action sequence where number 1, the Crimson Lance have our heroes pinned in a chase scene. There is no way they can possibly escape, only for Eli Roth's peerless writing to commit the act of God by removing a car from the frame in order for our heroes to escape through a hidden passageway and into a Thresher piss pit, which leads to a comedy scene that made me ponder the meaning of life. And the second time, they are in the Thresher pit. They are surrounded in every quarter by the Crimson Lance. There is nothing they can do. But then the Crimson Lance do nothing to stop them and allow our heroes to jump right in and shoot through the Thresher's mouth. It's like, geez, no wonder he decided to sign off the project. But let's talk about the cast members that did sign on the project. You saw the posters and the video game footage, so let's cut down to the casting and characters. Once I saw the casting announcements on Twitter, I said to myself, this has to be one of the most miscast ensembles that I've ever seen in my life. Everyone is either too old to be playing the characters they're based on, or incapable of matching their characteristics in essence entirely, or a bit of both. You look at this lineup and you think, who made these decisions? Whose brilliant idea was it to cast Cate Blanchett, an accomplished Hollywood actress in her 50s, to play a character who is in her early 30s? But if we were to take age out of the equation, whereas Lilith of the games is very charming and very sly, Cate Blanchett cannot be more disinterested and bored in her role. When she's instructed to deliver horrifically written exposition and appalling one-liners, you could just imagine her desperately wanting a cigarette break. Even her narration in the beginning, where she plops exposition about the Iridians and Pandora being taken over by vault hunters, corporations, and the like, sounds like she is in a dire need to walk out the set and into her acting trailer to contemplate what is she doing with her career. As a character, she has an arc that you've been exposed to 100 times over. She's a lonesome bounty hunter that is trying to make a living working alone, only to get drawn into a situation much bigger than herself, only to realize that she might get connected to said prophecy. But honestly, like, do you care? Roland, who may be among the most serious characters in the games, but at the same time isn't afraid to be a very charismatic and highly skilled leader, is being portrayed by comedian Kevin Hart. I guess Idris Elba was just too busy. He doesn't have enough sincerity or witty humor that makes his character stand out, and instead just acts like Kevin Hart playing a generic soldier in an action film. When he does deliver a line that's supposed to be funny, it is insufferable and puerile. Now, I just told you 2 out of the 4 characters in the first Borderlands game. So as a fan, you're probably thinking, where's the other 2, Mordecai and Brick? Well, they're not in this movie. Originally, I was kind of upset that the 2 characters didn't make the cut because they're really awesome characters. At the same time, upon retrospect, I'm thinking to myself, thank God they didn't make it. Florian Martineau, who is Victor Drago in Creed 2, plays the character Krieg, who really isn't a part of the main game's storyline. He was a downloadable character that was released months after Borderlands 2 was released. And in this movie, he only exists to be a troglodytic psycho-equivalent of Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy and gets shoehorned into the story because the plot says so. Now here's where things get interesting. Ariana Greenblatt, who is recently in Barbie, is now playing Tiny Tina. And from a performance perspective, her acting isn't really all that different from her role in Barbie. It's not to say that she's a bad actress. I'm sure she's great in other stuff before. It's just that she's not as explosive, unstable, and childlike as she is supposed to be in the games. Whereas Ashley Birch did so incredibly well, and she was the character's voice actor. Even her devolving into a bomb-making psychotic comes out of nowhere. What even convinced her to want to make them in the first place? Well, it's because it's from the games, and unlike the said series, it doesn't have the backstory to support it. When you really melt down the bells and whistles, she is really a plot device to progress the story rather than being a character all on her own. But this is what really pisses me off about her character. She stated after unleashing her entire backstory to Lilith that, she didn't really want a father or a mother. Child, please. Tell that to the video game counterpart whose parents were both sold and killed as test subjects because of Handsome Jack. She even saw Roland as a father figure and had a hard time dealing with his death in Borderlands 2. Spoilers for that game, by the way. Aside from the useless Patricia Tannis, who is portrayed unnecessarily by a confused Jamie Lee Curtis, who else do we have? Why don't we talk about the best character in the movie, Claptrap? Here's the thing about Claptrap. For annoying as he can be at times, there was a part of me that honestly kind of felt sorry for him. For those who haven't played the games, there is a side mission in which you decide to go attend Claptrap's birthday party. And for me, we ate cold pizza, we blew the party blower, we listened to some music that unfortunately wasn't metal, and we had a good time. And I didn't want him to be alone seeing how everyone rejected the invitations, so I did what I had to do to hopefully cheer him up. Had Claptrap been voiced by Jack Black, my present to him for his birthday would have been me throwing him in an industrial shredder. Instead of hiring the original voice actors who could have given his character some personality and a voice that doesn't make your ears bleed, we are instead given Jack Black's worst voice acting to date. His ability to mimic the character's vocal performance is executed horrifically, failing to mirror the innocent and upbeat delivery of his predecessors. Every time he screams, delivers a punchline, and sings to himself, it's like the second coming of Fred Figglehorn. It makes things worse when you realize that he plays both a major part of the story, which ends up becoming just one gigantic coincidence, and the film's primary source of what Eli Roth calls comedy, like pooping out bullet caps and making a scene which causes an action scene to commence. I didn't think it would be possible for Eli Roth to make a video game adapted character I would find as infuriating as Maximus from Fallout. But you found a way, Mr. Roth. You freaking found a way. This catastrophe doesn't stop at the characters and the plot, though. The whole entire enterprise looks like an inexpensive fan film on YouTube, except that there are several fan films on YouTube that have a lot more creativity and embellishment than this hunk of garbage. So let's start with the production design on the Pandora Wasteland. Almost every other studio backlot looked like Roth told a bunch of set designers to throw garbage on top of each other to give it the illusion that it's this ransacked area pillaged by bandits and called it a day. There wasn't kind of any innovation attached to it like you would see in, say, Fury Road or Furiosa, for example, or even the Fallout show. And again, I've been using this example for a bunch of other movies in terms of budget, but the creator was $80 million and it was a visual marvel. And this is the best you can do with $120 million. What shares something in common with Mortal Kombat 2021, another pile of crud, is that the costume design is cheaply made. It's like they borrowed used clothing from Goodwill to prevent themselves from overspending the budget to make them look somewhat or nothing like the original characters, and at times produce some of the most tacky, uninspired cosplay that would even look out of place at a convention. Cheap is also a good term to describe the CGI. The creature compositing, rendering, texturing, and the design of the skags, racks, and threshers. Whoever seriously thought that this looks anything like a thresher failed miserably. Look like leftover effects that were used in the live-action Resident Evil films, and simple effects like fire or a shield to protect our heroes with look like community college levels of hideous. Then again, there are some community colleges that will do a much better job in this movie. But wait, there is that all-important question. Is there anything good about this movie? Well, they got the guy who voiced Dutch Vanderlyn in Red Dead Redemption 2 to play a not-so-bad Marcus. He was alright for how little screen time he was in. And they also didn't play No Rest for the Wicked in the soundtrack, though they unfortunately played Motörhead's Ace of Spades, which was an absolute travesty that they did that because that song is heavy metal magic. Yeah, I got nothing else. Borderlands is the Murphy's Law of video game adaptations. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. To the director, to the cast, the script, the production, the visuals, the dialogue, everything about it sucks. And there is no doubt in my mind that given the box office numbers for this thing, that it will live in infamy as one of the biggest box office bombs in cinematic history. Those who gave this movie a positive review are gonna look ashamed in hindsight. And I never thought I would do this, but you remember way back when people described Warcraft to be the worst summer movie blockbuster since Battlefield Earth? And yeah, that did actually happen. With this movie being released, I think it's about time that they gave Warcraft an apology. But that's just my opinion. My name is Luke Nukem. Have a nice day.
I'm the conductor of the poop train!